Financial Assets Authority was formed six years ago, I should say. According to official data, the individuals have lodged 500 million shillings claims with the agency, which is holding 13 billion shillings belonging to 2 million Kenyans. The claim rate translates to a paltry 0.35% of the targeted owners, which range from as low as 25 shillings to a maximum of 7 million shillings. Now, the assets are largely collected from mobile money and bank balances, as well as listed company dividends, mature insurance policies, and unpaid salaries. The authority is calling on Kenyans to disclose whereabouts of their assets to the kin, saying many families were languishing in poverty since their breadwinner concealed information about various investments made during their working life. UFA currently has 13 billion shillings in cash and a further 555 million shares valued at roughly 25 billion shillings. And this is what we want to slice and dice with our panelists this morning. We continue with the conversation, and it's good also to see Joe Gige has also joined us this morning. Sir, good to see you. Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
You are running late. What happened? You know, on this show, when people run late, they come and kneel down before us.
I'll make sure I do that the next time.
So we can just walk in and sit. You have come and kneel and apologize before the viewers why you're late.
My deepest apologies.
Good to see you. Good to see you. But let's just begin with Paul from UFA to just tell us the current state of play as it is. We know you had the Rapid Results Initiative campaign that went on. And you also to share your data with regional and county administration officers to help create awareness among Kenyans. It seems many Kenyans are still none the wiser as far as unclaimed assets is concerned in this country.
Fine, yes, to some extent, but there are a lot of traction that we are gaining on that count.
There's a lot of traction.
Certainly, yes, and I just want to update those numbers I've heard you talk about. We have grown significantly over the past few months. Remember, the compliance cycle was coming about in the month of November, of the 1st November of every other year. So 2019 just passed. And we have new numbers that currently the fund sits around 16.1 billion in cash.
Yes.
And we have upward of 830 million units of shares. So roughly we have about 50 billion worth of assets sitting with the authority.
Yes.
A lot of those have since been claimed. We have seen a lot of activities on the reunification counter. Remember, we have had a number of initiatives that we have deployed recently. Most significantly is our partnership with the Ministry of Interior, where we have mobilized the nation, courtesy of national government administration officers. First and foremost, capacity building them on the mandate that the authority have, yes. And importantly, also how do they, have point of convergences with the services that we offer, so that members of the public do not necessarily therefore have to come to Nairobi or inquire with our offices about what assets and stuff. That these services are available at the office of the chief in their location, but also is our ability to dissect the database. Over the years, we have had this database available on our website. In fact, it is even to date. And we also deployed the USSD service, where more members of the public can, register and, search the data with their names and stuff. But importantly, recently, is that we are able now to map out the numbers of people we have with their names and ID numbers and share the same with the various local administrators, so that we know Dibal come from this village, and therefore the local chief has your name and ID and some information about who we are looking for, so that we trigger the local administrators to look for members of the public out there and to come and take up our services. The more reason I'm saying that there have been a lot of traction again on the reunification counter, owing to all this initiative that we have deployed recently, and a lot of other things that we'll be highlighting in the course of this discussion.
All right, so broadly as it is right now, how many Kenyans, because I know also you have a USSD where they can try and key in and get the information from the mobile, or is it just a mobile phone or any other device? But is this particular intent for the mobile phone?
Yes, we appreciate that our services are largely offered through the digital platform. Looking at the numbers in the very recent times, we have seen a lot of traffic on our website, and we have been able to map the traction on that count alone. The USSD uptick that only began last year is now logging upward of about 600 million people already registered on that platform. So that 600,000 rather. So that service again shows that there is a need for members of the public, to uptake the service that we offer. But importantly is how are we able to translate those numbers into reunification counter? There are all discussion, and I know Joe will be coming to this conversation shortly,
yes,
about the national policy to unlock a number of things that have been impeding the reunification agenda. One being that as much as we are saying that a lot of people are uptaking our services through USSD, registering online through our website portal, that we have not been able to disclose the value. So that a lot of traffic, therefore, is also being translated to inquiries coming through our office, and also making inquiries through telephone calls. So that people ordinarily inquire, how much is it that I'm coming to claim? And we want to see how can we unlock that to ensure that members of the public can know in good time about what value is it that they are actually coming to claim. And a lot of conversation has been happening fairly recently in the development of national policy to unlock a number of those things.
All right, I just want you to run me by maybe what has been remitted from, because we know the bank, the listed companies as well, the telecoms, insurance companies, as of last year. If I may just put up that a bit. We have the banking sector with that particular, I know you have the info with you, and listed companies, up to SACCOs as well. Who in this particular sector do you think is not roped in as far as the Unclaimed Assets Authority is concerned?
Our biggest pain point has been how has the government also, because it is anticipated that government is also a holder of unclaimed assets.
The government?
Yes. The government in its entirety, meaning therefore that institutions that are public has a responsibility to also remit unclaimed assets in their custody. And we would therefore say that institutions, particularly in the education sector, universities, high schools, all of them have an element of asset classes they hold that is anticipated and provided for in the Unclaimed Financial Assets Act. And the rate at which therefore these institutions have been limiting these assets has been wanting. Judiciary is the other, the pension sector, particularly within the National Social Security Fund. A lot of pension that are owed to members of the public who have since retired or departed service for one or the other reason, that is therefore due or anticipated to be due to be unclaimed assets as provided for in the Act, has also been a challenge. But what we have done fairly recently is to engage the public sector accounting standard board that now provide for how does public institutions account for and provide for a statement of annual reports every other year. In respect to how do they disclose unclaimed assets in their custody without necessarily the institution going or the authority going to undertake audits, as much as we are doing a lot of audits in that count. So that by way of that disclosure, as provided for by the public service accounting and standard boards, therefore they are obligated to disclose and therefore surrender through the requisite provisions from the exchequer of the unclaimed assets in their custody.
All right. So we do hope that the policy we're talking about, because I'm given to understand also the National Treasury published a draft unclaimed financial assets policy, which it says will raise the bar of reporting requirements with regard to abandoned assets, such as also bank deposits as well. In this particular draft report, if you're privy to it, do you think it has captured your concerns about the judiciary and different government agencies that are not really remitting this unclaimed assets as it is? Let's just hear from Ngige and also Vincent on this. Let's just rope in Joe, because he's not spoken. Good morning.
Yes, morning. First of all, it's very nice to see my mwalimu, Dr. Wainaina. I left the university 35 years ago, so that's the last time he taught me. It's our anniversary.
How many years?
35 this year. So it's very nice. And of course, Mwalimu was very involved when we were developing this.
Yes.
First of all, let me say, we have had, at least I have had a very serious rethink about what the problems of this industry are. And I think the problems of this industry is that when we were doing the law, we made the authority the regulator, we made the authority the trustee of the trust fund, and we made the authority the agent. So he's the regulator playing in the same area that he's regulating. And I think there is a very serious conflict in that particular circumstances. And I think, with all due respect, I think most of the failures of the authority are coming out of that conflict of interest. When you look at the central bank is not a commercial bank. They regulate, they don't play that role. Recently, Governor Njoroge has finally managed to get rid of the Deposit Protection Fund, or what is called the Deposit Insurance Corporation. So I think when we wrote in the law that the authority may appoint reunification agents, we said may. Actually, we should have said shall, because what they have done is that they have not appointed any reunification agents. And when you look at the caliber and the quality of the reunification agents that they are appointing, chiefs, I mean, I don't think that chiefs are the best agents, especially when we have people like the credit reference bureaus. Credit reference bureaus are holding data. The telcos are holding serious data in terms of tracing and tracking people. So I have had a rethink, and I think this is where the problem really lies, that the authority should be a regulator, and they should license service providers, and those service providers are completely separate from them. But you can't be a regulator and play in the same space. I think this conflict of interest is, I think, where the rain is starting to hit us. And the numbers you're talking about, the reunification,
but
what?
You've got yourself to blame.
Well,
yeah,
no, I'm not saying we're not to blame.
Yes.
But you see, we learn as we go along.
Correct.
At that time, that was the thinking. We thought that was what was correct. But we can go back to Parliament.
What really informed that thinking from the go-getting?
I beg your pardon?
What really informed the thinking? No,
initially we want of that. Law is a developing. It's a living thing. I mean, we are consulting with the financial service providers. Yes. We are consulting with the fund managers. We are consulting with the custody banks. We are consulting with the custodians, with the administrators. And the case he just mentioned of NSSF, actually, NSSF was exactly where they are. They were the collectors of the remittances, they were the investors, they were the administrators. So when RBA was formed, the first thing they did was to decouple, that and say that the industry should be run on separate lands, where you have got fund managers, you've got custodians, and you've got administrators. So everybody is doing what they are best at. And I think as a regulator, the Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority needs to stick as a regulator. The trust fund needs to be a separate body, and the reunification agents are licensed by the regulator. But playing in all the fields, and Kimbo, so perhaps you would probably agree with me.
Okay. I would love to shed light on that. First of all, I think DBAL at times have come to realize it's very possible to complain very fast before you celebrate success. So I want to agree on some issues Joe has raised, but I want to say that we have been in this journey before the Act passed, when the Act was being implemented, and now in implementation. There are lessons we have to draw. I think for me, Paul, one of the things that we need to see the authority do is leadership in the thought space on the subject of unclaimed assets. What do I mean by leadership in the thought space? These issues that Joe has pointed out on, what does it mean to play in the regulatory space? What does it mean to play in the agency space? That is why now you convene thought conferences and platforms for us to come and share our story. I would want to say that, Joe, if we were to move in that direction, look at NSSF. This is in the 60s. And RBA came in the 2000s. So we had a 40-year experience of the journey. I would want to say that maybe we can allow a 10-year implementation, like we've had with our constitution, for us to really appreciate what is the regulatory space. The central bank has just removed the deposit protection. There was a timeline on the experience we had in the 90s, the collapse in the banking sector, as in there was a journey that has been traveled.
Yes.
I think I would be of the opinion, Joe, that we need to allow the authorities to travel a certain journey for the knowledge curve to ease out. What do I mean? We went to Malaysia for a learning visit together with New Zealand. And actually they have another challenge and experience on what does it mean to engage reunification agencies. One of them was the whole element of integrity. The other thing is also the experiences that the challenges they've had. On the issue of disclosures, Australia, if you go to the website of the Australian Security Commission, you will actually realize that they provide all the information, including the amounts. Paul has alluded that they've had a busy counter on the reunification platform. Majority of the people, actually, if we were to break down this data, we will realize somebody comes and says, by the way, how much do I have? 200 or 3,000 shillings. When they weigh the cost of reunification vis-a-vis the amount they would want, they say, I don't think it is worth the expense. So I think because it's good to take responsibility, when we made the decision to say we will only provide where the money has come from, the last address, and then where we will not provide the amounts, we were concerned about, is this going to be a possibility that, the privacy of people's information. But I think a time has come, on what say the policy, the authority should include the amounts. What happens? You cannot go to be reunified with 50 shillings when you see even the transport from CBD to Westlands and back is going to be 60. As I'm just talking the average person's language. So Safaricom, for example, gave over 500,000 number of their subscribers who had M-Pesa balances of less than 1 shillings. Cumulatively, 500,000 people, 1 shilling. From a quantum perspective, you have 500,000. But from a reunification perspective, to reunify 1 shilling, even the cost of an SMS is 2 shillings.
It's 2 shillings.
So now, why is the policy now the nexus to what Joe was pointing out? I am concerned about the leadership part. Number 2 is also the cost of reunification. I think, Paul, one of the things we may want to discuss, and I take responsibility for some of the decisions we took, is that we may have actually made also reunification more complex and a lot of documents bulky.
Right.
So I think for me, those are the things of celebrating and taking responsibility.
Let's hear from Paul a bit.
No, sure. I'm liking the debate as it goes, and with all due respect to the acknowledgement of my former chair, who took leadership in the discussion that we're having here over the past couple of years.
Yes.
Now, coming back to a number of issues that have been raised by my colleagues on this table, in respect to why is it that we are going to ask chiefs to look for you. Mm-hmm. Now, were we to look at the database called Unclaimed Financial Asset Database in respect of how does that data sit, mm-hmm. and how can we dissect it to understand the intricacies of the ownership of what we call now unclaimed financial assets, it's important to appreciate a number of things. One of them is the values at individual level. As we speak, in that database it sits upward of 12 million or 13 million or thereabout, mm-hmm. entries, meaning that we would have Dibal with 3 or so, and then I have mine probably 1 or 2. Cumulatively, we have around 13 million entries in that database. We have Dibal 20 times, or Joe 2 times, Professor 1 time. Cumulatively, we are talking about 13 million entries. Mm-hmm. Out of this is that how institutions who are emitting these monies as the regulations so provide is that they could look for any identifier of the person owning an unclaimed asset. So they will throw in an SSF number, they will throw in an NHF number, probably an ID, probably a passport number. So that if you are to ask therefore that who is this Dibal, who has an ID number here, an SSF number there, you cannot really link both because probably the same person, yet we have not been able to know exactly whether this is the same Dibal we are looking for across the various entries that are available on our database. So what we have done is that we have done consolidation of that database to ensure that we at least identify DIBAL with the various entries in that database. And this is the information we are saying that National Registration Bureau has been able to unpack that for us to identify who is this DIBAL and how can we locate this DIBAL. Because if you look at Section 33 of our Act, it provides that the authority must do every effort to locate and notify a DIBAL in respect of the unclaimed assets available. So our engaging chief is not necessarily as agent per se, but importantly, for the very purpose of providing information, and importantly, that DIBAL is made aware that there exist unclaimed assets with the custody of the authority. The other thing is that within the 13 million or so entries, how does that data sit in terms of value? So what we have done is not to attempt to understand how does the ownership of the so many billions we are talking about are sitting with the various numerous entries. And what we have been able to do is to categorize ownership from 0 shillings to 100 shillings and graduating that up to upward, because we have some information relating to about 15 million or so of somebody who has that unclaimed assets. So that we now know that upward of 60% of the data that we have has people who have 1,000 and below. Meaning, therefore, that we are looking for upward of 7 million people to come and claim 1,000 shillings, 2,000 shillings probably, 5 shillings, 1 bob. And the cost of looking for these people is equally the same with that of looking for somebody who has 15 million and more, or even a million. So then we are looking at, can we also identify what would be the incentive of a person looking for 1 million shilling available in the unclaimed financial assets vis-a-vis that of somebody who has a shilling. Therefore, as much as we are saying that we are creating awareness and people appreciate that we exist, they have been notified by their chief and every other effort that we have done as an authority, then the incentive that a person with 1,000 shillings, like my former chairman has said, is not the same with that of 1 million shilling. And meaning, therefore, that we may be waiting for somebody to come and claim 1,000 shilling and they will never come. Yet they know that they have unclaimed assets with the authority. But somebody with such a significant amount, not that any other amount is not, but they have every incentive, and we have other strategies beyond just notifying them, that we are also looking for them, literally. Where are they? Because we have been able to map where they are, so that the chief can tell us that this person is in this village, and if it's not, therefore the family whom the chief can identify can notify this person that there exists some unclaimed assets with the authority, and therefore you are at liberty at your convenient time to lodge a claim with it, and it will be paid to you.
Okay.
Let me come in, please.
Okay, let's hear from you, but let's hear from Professor before we come to you, Joe. Then we'll ask also issues to do with the reunification. We know also politicians that you've actually listed some of them as people who have unclaimed assets and they've not really come to claim these particular assets. What do we do with this particular tidy sum of money also they do have as unclaimed?
Maybe not much, because if you check the way from Joe, and good to see you, Joe, for some time. You have very serious experts in that area. I remember, Joe, when you were starting this, I was involved in him. I was in government then, and our meetings here and there. But I think the discussion Vincent or the report, it's great. But I'll probably look at it from a different perspective in the sense that there we are with assets worth this much, 10 billion.
50 now.
15.
50
billion. Yeah. I think to me, it's how can we utilize that prudently to invest? As we are talking about in terms of claiming, that was also the idea, that this can be used productively so that we can actually even enable those people who are coming to claim. So probably I would look at it from the perspective, do we have credible, and I think, Vincent, you're right. If you try to look at the areas like we're talking agriculture, we're looking at manufacturing, we look at agro-processing, are those areas we can actually get this kind, invest in them? One, there will be returns in it. Secondly, you'll be having government agenda in terms of even looking at the agriculture sector and that. But I think the point, Paul, you're raising is important. We have a lot of difficulties in the identification of our Kenyans. But I think I'm going for where we leverage with institutions like Safaricom. Because Safaricom nearly reaches everybody, the last mile. Can we use that platform, really? Most people, and even perhaps some of us here, we rarely go to the websites. And when you go to the websites, at times they're very nagging. at times it's very cumbersome. But why can't I get to my cell and sort of get that way of dealing with it? And I know the chief is important here in identification, and even leveraging on Huduma centers, leveraging on Huduma number we are coming with. And that may be something in this country we need to get rid of, because one day you have an NSSF, you have a whatever, and it comes and hits you at times. I've been having some communication with a bank, a serious bank in this country. We have an organization where you have Tanzanian and Kenyans. And they kept telling me the names don't tally. I'm like, hey, I have more time in my work. If the names, look at the name, it's just one, it's ABC, there's a name called Juma. The other one doesn't have a Juma. That's the whole thing to huraburu by this bank. So like somewhere we make things complicated. How do we imagine there are certain ways to do things faster?